This is Jay Sekulow. The Supreme Court says that the Mojave Desert Cross can stay. A group steals it, and the Justice Department won't let a new one go up. This is not getting discussed on the mainstream media. Not only are they wrong legally, but the fact that they would do this is outrageous. This is an overreaction and really nonsense. How would you react if this was your son or your daughter? It's the offense of knowing the truth. It's the offense of having an alternate worldview. Saying God bless you to someone is not a violation of the law. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the broadcast. In a little bit, we're going to be joined by Kelly Shackelford. He is an attorney that represents the veterans of foreign war. The issue that we're talking about today is a cross in the Mojave Desert. It's a war memorial for World War I veterans. It's been in place since the 1930s. It was challenged by the ACLU. The case went to the Supreme Court of the United States, and we were successful in that case. Our side was successful. The VFW was successful. We represented members of Congress that wanted that war memorial to stay. It was allowed to stay. There's still some other litigation going on about it. In the meantime, although the cross was allowed to stay, interestingly, it was stolen. And now the Department of Justice, our United States Department of Justice, Jordan, refuses to allow it to be posted. Yeah,
that's exactly right. I mean, you have a situation here where the Department of Justice could do the right thing while this lawsuit continues and at least let the status quo go back, which is just having the cross up. You know, Kelly Shackelford, the attorney who represents the VFW, told us something that everyone has to understand. You know, this government spokesperson from the National Park Service said, well, one of the reasons we can't let one of the replacements, which is exact replica, up is because it doesn't have the exact same markings as the original cross.
Yeah, one of those markings, yeah.
One of those markings was from when President Clinton was in office. He actually instructed the Park Service to remove this cross. So some employee went out with a chainsaw and tried to cut this cross down. I mean, imagine the scenery there. Well, what he didn't know, that employee, was that the people who maintained the cross actually poured cement into the middle of the cross so that, of course, it's in the middle of the desert, so it would withstand. So there's a mark on it from an attempt in the 90s for a chainsaw trying to cut the cross down. That's one of the markings. She said, well, because that's not there, this replacement cross can't go back up.
So they won't allow the replacement cross for this war memorial to go back up, despite the fact that the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision said that monument can stay. It did not violate the Establishment Clause. Again, there were some other issues that were being litigated, but it was stolen. And now the Department of Justice, and I want to repeat this, will not let the duplicate be posted. We're taking your phone calls. Let's go right to the phones, Jordan. We already have calls coming in, and then I'm going to tell you how you can take some direct action here.
Jennifer's calling from California on line 1. Jennifer, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live.
Hi, Jennifer.
In honor to God and to my dad who went overseas for Korea and Vietnam, and to my brother who went overseas twice to Vietnam, put that cross back up in the Mojave Desert now.
Well, listen, we appreciate your sympathy and we appreciate your support and appreciate the service of your family to the country. But the reality is it is now up to the United States Department of Justice. And they don't want to do it. I mean, the fact of the matter is they just don't want to do this. And because of that, what we're finding, and I'll tell you what we're doing, we're taking direct action, and the reason we're taking direct action is we think pressure has to be put on the Department of Justice. We've got a demand letter going to the Department of Justice saying put that cross back. We're also sending, with every letter we've sent, we're sending small wooden crosses as a representation of what's going on here. So when you call our toll-free number and add your name to this letter, we're going to send in your name, basically, a cross to the Department of Justice. 10,000 of them so far, if you can imagine this. So I want to encourage you right now to take a real stand for this war memorial in the Mojave Desert. The number's 1-877-989-2255. Let me give you that number again. It's 877-989-2255. Now, you're signing a letter that's going to be going with us to the Department of Justice demanding that that cross be put back up in place as the war memorial in the Mojave Desert. And this is also important here. We're also going to send a small wooden cross as a representation of exactly what's at play here, because the reality is, Jordan, this is up to the Department of Justice to decide.
That's right. The Department of Justice could do the right thing here and get this cross back up. They allowed the National Park Service to have their spokesperson going out there and making comments, someone who's not an attorney, who went so far, we talk about this with Kelly in a few minutes, went so far to say that we don't have any monuments and we don't allow monuments to be put up on federal land. Now, we're here in Washington, D.C. It's one big monument on federal land everywhere you look. So for the Park Service to say this, you understand their thinking. They've wanted this cross down. That's why one of the marks on the cross that they talk about so much is from a chainsaw.
If this was any other religious group, can you imagine if this was a Muslim group? They'd be charging people with hate crimes. There'd be indictments going on. But because it's a cross, nothing happens. So that means you and I have to take direct legal action here. Here's the number to sign a letter going to the Department of Justice. And again, we're going to send that small wooden cross with every one of you that sign on to this. 877-989-2255 is the number to sign on to the demand letter. 1-877-989-2255 or ACLJ.org. But again, 877-989-2255 to take a stand for this World War I Memorial Cross. All right, we've got a lot more to talk about, a lot more phone calls ahead. Again, we're taking direct action here, so continue to monitor the situation. We'll be joined by Kelly Shackelford, the lawyer for the Veterans of Foreign War, when we come back right after this.
A 7-foot cross on display in the Mojave Desert for more than 70 years, put in place by the VFW, a World War I memorial. The cross has survived many challenges, most recently at the Supreme Court just last month, ruling there's no constitutional crisis, saying the cross could stay in place. But then, vandals struck. They removed the cross. The outrage triggered an immediate response. A replacement cross was quickly made, and efforts began to put the replica back in place. But there's a problem. The National Park Service has refused, and now it's up to the Department of Justice to make a decision. The American Center for Law and Justice is preparing a demand letter urging the Justice Department to put up the replacement cross without delay. It's time for the Justice Department to do what's right. Stand with the ACLJ, and if you call now, we'll send a miniature cross to the Justice Department on your behalf. A reminder that thousands of Americans want the Supreme Court ruling honored. Call now 1-877-989-2255 or online at aclj.org.
Well, as I mentioned on the broadcast, we are fortunate to have with us a lawyer that's been handling a large part of this case involving the Mojave Desert Cross, especially representing the VFW, which is really the focal center of this. Kelly Shackelford is a good friend. He's been on the broadcast many times. Really helped us out in the Ten Commandments case because the VFW filed a really significant brief that was actually cited by the Supreme Court in our case from last year that we won unanimously. Well, you know, the Mojave Desert case, Kelly, wasn't a unanimous victory, but it was 5-4. Let's, again, kind of set the framework quickly here, and then we'll get some calls as to what happened. We know the cross is gone right now, and we know that the Department of Justice, as of right now, isn't really responding appropriately. But give us a little history of how long this cross has been there. What was kind of the background of it?
Well, in 1934, World War I veterans came back from the war, and they had seen, obviously, some horrific things. And they went out to the desert to heal, in the middle of the Mojave Desert, to prospect. And while they were out there, they would get together to fellowship with one another, and they decided they wanted to put up something to remember those who had given their lives.
Now, these are World War I veterans we're talking about here.
Absolutely. And this is land that it wasn't federal land. It was really out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. And they decided to put up a cross to represent those who had given their lives. They even put a plaque on the bottom in case anybody had a question as to what this was, and it said, "For the dead of all wars." And that was their way to remember those who had given the ultimate sacrifice for their country. And it has sat there for 76 years. And then what happened is, in the 1990s, federal land became a federal preserve. President Clinton kind of took over a bunch of land, made it parks and federal preserve, and this became a federal preserve. The ACLU then saw that they had a way in, and they actually filed a lawsuit and said, hey, you can't have this cross on federal land.
Now, originally the land was private land. It then becomes federal land through the acquisition program that's been going on for a number of years. And now all of a sudden the cross becomes at issue and a constitutional showdown takes place.
That's exactly right. And they filed a lawsuit, and I think a lot of people's shock, both the district court and the Ninth Circuit said, yes, you have to tear down this cross.
Yeah, no shock with the Ninth Circuit. A little surprising with the district court because they're not as notoriously as liberal as the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit, not a great shock. Of course, then it goes to the Supreme Court of the United States. A 5-4 decision comes down. You represented the VFW. We represented, I think, members of Congress in it because obviously they've had the land issues were involving the congressional attacks were made. And so the cross should have been able at least to be stayed in its current state. Someone steals the cross. And the Justice Department, I know you've got to be careful about this. I don't have to be as careful as Kelly does on this because he's doing some negotiating. But the fact of the matter is that cross is not up. It's been stolen. And the Department of Justice, as of right now, is not allowing it back on.
No, I mean, and that is, let's be clear, to do what is done under federal statute, this is a federal crime. You can get up to 10 years in prison
for tampering with
a memorial like this, a national veterans memorial. And instead of correcting and putting this back up the way it was before, what has happened is we basically have a national memorial that is sitting in a vandalized state.
Now, we're talking about, Jordan, you've talked about this before, we're talking about a cross that is about 8 feet in height in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Right. I mean, we've got pictures of it, which we'll be showing people throughout the broadcast, and that became the showdown here.
Yeah, and that's where we're at this point now where that's the constitutional controversy that hits the country over a cross because a former employee gets upset about seeing this. Again, small cross here. We're not talking about something like Mount Soledad, which is a big cross that you could see as like a kind of aviation marker or major landmark for even for boats. Yeah, right. We're talking about the middle of a desert, a 7 to 8 foot tall cross, been there since 1934, has not caused anyone any problems, and just honors our veterans.
But one person did not like that cross, and the end result of that, and we're going to get to your calls in a moment, is that cross then gets stolen after a Supreme Court victory. And right now the Department of Justice has said nothing and as far as allowing it to be put up. In fact, right now they're not allowing it to be us. And there's an exact replica of this cross ready to go up, correct?
Absolutely. The guy who has been the caretaker for 26 years, he made a promise to the last living World War I veteran that he would take care of it. He has been taking care of it. He has all the dimensions. He has the pictures. He has reconstructed an exact replica, and we're ready to go up as soon as the government gets out of the way.
Yeah, and the government, of course, one of the was it the National Park Service, I guess, or Department of Interior spokesperson,
right,
Jordan, said it wasn't an exact replica, they said, right?
That's right. That was what the Park Service spokesperson was not a attorney, of course. That's who the government allowed to first comment on this matter, not the Department of Justice, who later started commenting, but it was a Park Service employee who said, we never have any monuments on federal land. Well, I mean, I'm here in Washington, D.C. This is where I live, and I see a lot of monuments outside our office, my apartment door, and that's actually what the Park Service spokesperson said, is we don't allow monuments on federal parkland.
Yeah, this just shows you kind of the reality of, or the lack of reality that the Park Service is dealing with. Nevertheless, as it stands right now, that cross is not back up, despite a Supreme Court ruling and the valiant efforts of the VFW and the caretaker of the facility. So one of the things we're asking you to do is the number on your screen. Call that number. Stand with us on this, demanding that the Department of Justice allow this to be put back up, this replica be put back up. One of the comments was, well, the replica doesn't have the same nicks and beat-up marks that a cross that had been there 50 years it had. These are absurd statements. So, again, voice your concern on this. You know what I did on the previous radio broadcast a couple weeks ago, Kelly? We actually sent into the Department of Justice little wooden crosses, thousands of them. For everybody that called in, we sent in with the letter to the Department of Justice saying, put the cross back up. And there must have been 5,000 of these crosses, maybe more than that, sent. And we'll do the same thing. But again, folks, you got to speak out on this. Let's go get some phone calls here, and then we'll get some more comments.
John's calling from California on line 3. John, welcome to JSECO Live.
Hi, John.
Hey, Jay. Hey, since that cross isn't up now, that land now go to the VFW?
Well, the land is now owned by the federal government. It's gone back to what is the status on all of that?
That's what we're going back down to argue before the court. I mean, our position certainly is
as the VFW.
This
right?
is the VFW's land. We should get the land, and that's exactly what the court should do. And certainly, the VFW is going to take care of this memorial from that point on. Right now, that's the frustration, is this should be our land, but yet the government technically still owns it until the lawsuit is over, and they're standing in our way of getting a memorial.
So the difficult part of this, and I appreciate the call, John, the difficult part of this is the reality that the litigation continues. The cross isn't up there. That's the rub on this thing that really bothers me so significantly here. That's the real problem with this.
Let's go back, take another phone call. Mark's calling from California on line 4. Mark, welcome to JSECO Live.
Hi, Mark.
Good morning, gentlemen. The question I have is, what's the difference between the cross in the Mojave Desert on federal soil versus a cross in a national cemetery? And is the ACLU trying to remove crosses from federal cemeteries?
Well, if they had their way, Mark, they'd be gone. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. There's some large crosses at Arlington National Cemetery, and if the ACLU had their druthers, it would be gone. It's like the military chaplains. They'd like those removed, too. That's the reality. And they're constitutionally, Kelly, there is no distinction.
There's not, and that's ultimately what this is about. I mean, if you have to tear down a 7-foot cross in the middle of 1.6 million acres of desert, you've got to do something about the 24-foot cross in the Arlington Memorial Cemetery, and that the crosses and Stars of David in every community in every state of this country.
Yeah, what about go ahead, Jordan.
And that's what we've been trying to discuss with everybody. And think about it. Think about the war memorials you visited. Think about the cemeteries that you visited that are honoring those who have fallen for our country, and the religious imagery all over them. If you look, sometimes you don't have to look very closely at all. Sometimes it's on the side of the expressway, like in San Diego, Mount Soledad. These situations, though, they start with something as simple as a 6 to 8 foot tall cross in the middle of a desert, and this becomes a constitutional controversy. So you can't, for 1 minute, take anything for granted.
All right, we've got more with Kelly Shackelford when we come back and more on this discussion. But again, folks, we need to take direct action. There's a number on your screen, especially for our television audience here. There's a number on the screen. You need to call that number, sign this letter, go into the Department of Justice, demanding that war memorial cross replica be put back up in place. Jordan's going to give you the number. You need to take direct action right now, folks, and we're going to send that small wooden cross. That'll really send a message to the Department of Justice of exactly what we're talking about.
Well, folks, if you want to send one of those crosses in your name, here's the toll-free number you call. It's 877-989-2255. I'll give you the number one more time. That's 877-989-2255.
A 7-foot cross on display in the Mojave Desert for more than 70 years, put in place by the VFW, a World War I memorial. The cross has survived many challenges, most recently at the Supreme Court just last month, ruling there's no constitutional crisis, saying the cross could stay in place. But then, vandals struck. They removed the cross. The outrage triggered an immediate response. A replacement cross was quickly made, and efforts began to put the replica back in place. But there's a problem. The National Park Service has refused, and now it's up to the Department of Justice to make a decision. The American Center for Law and Justice is preparing a demand letter urging the Justice Department to put up the replacement cross without delay. It's time for the Justice Department to do what's right. Stand with the ACLJ, and if you call now, we'll send a miniature cross to the Justice Department on your behalf. A reminder that thousands of Americans want the Supreme Court ruling honored. Call now 1-877-989-2255 or online at aclj.org.
Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Again, if you're just joining us, we're dealing with a very unique situation, a Mojave Desert Cross, a war memorial to World War I veterans. World War I veterans. And that monument's been there since the 1930s. Here's what's happened. It was challenged by the American Civil Liberties Union. We ultimately went to the Supreme Court of the United States, and our side was successful on it. We represented members of Congress, and we won. And that was good news, except then a week later, it was 1 week later, right, Jordan, that cross was stolen.
That's right. Just a few days later, you got the cross disappears. So these activists are getting exactly what they want. The Supreme Court says the cross can stay for now, and they take it down. No one's found out who these people are. The VFW's got a $125,000 reward out, and the person who did it said they did it because they think this violates the separation of church and state. So it's their side is winning by having this cross taken down. Well,
we're fighting back on this. We join more with Kelly Shackelford from the Veterans of Foreign War in just a moment here. He's the lawyer representing them. But I need to get you to take direct action. Here is the number for you to call right now. Add your name to a letter going to the Department of Justice. And as Jordan said, we're going to send a small wooden cross with everybody that calls, 10,000 of them so far. 877-989-2255. Signing a demand letter saying put that Mojave Desert War Memorial Cross back in place. 877-989-2255 or aclj.org. Let's go back to the phones.
Susan's calling from Colorado on line 4. Susan, welcome to JSECUO Live.
Hi, Susan.
My husband was in the service. My great-uncle was in the service, and he's actually a veteran of World War II, and then my stepfather is a VFW veteran. I'm just kind of seeing, and my husband's son just got shot at yesterday and almost killed, so we're just so grateful that he's still alive, praise the Lord. It just seems to me, Jay, like the liberal media seems to be winning over and everything. With the president we have.
Well, look, it's more than just the media here. It's the court. I mean, the fact of the matter is the media can report something, and Fox, by the way, did a great job of covering it in the right way by being fair and balanced and really talking about what was at issue. But it's the courts, and elections have consequences, and frankly, this is the consequence of the election. This is this. I will say this very bluntly. Under President Bush, that cross would be back up. Is there any doubt in your mind
No, I think it would be. I think it would be. But I will say this to the caller. I mean, we don't plan to lose this case.
Right.
We plan to win this case, and every one of these attacks on veterans memorials, and the veterans are totally committed to this, and they've always been committed, but when they vandalized and tore this thing down, I have never seen the American Legion, the VFW, these veterans groups, they said, they just made this very personal to us. And so I know that our veterans are 150%
well, I mean, somebody
behind this.
steals the monument, and the government, instead of going after the perpetrators of the crime, are basically doing nothing. And as I said, if this was any other group's monument, and if it was a religious group's monument, or like, a Muslim group's monument, you can imagine the outcry here. It would be hate crime legislation, special bills, special prosecutors. What do we get? Not only do we not get any investigation of any significance, we don't get the cross back up, the exact replica, because it doesn't have the same paint and nicks that the one from 50 years ago had.
Man, we got a caller right on this. Brett from Pennsylvania on line 1. Brett, welcome to JSECUO Live.
Hi, Brett.
Hi, Jordan. Hi, Jay. Look, this just seems to be nothing more than a continued assault on our traditional American and Judeo-Christian values. Look at the cases involving the American flag in schools. I mean, this... Yep. It's just disgusting that every day it seems like this administration turns around and does something more that slaps our traditional principles.
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, you're talking about the American flag case. 2 students that had the nerve to wear an American flag on a T-shirt during Cinco de Mayo, and they end up getting expelled. We've got a student that was expelled. We went to court and got a TRO, a temporary restraining order, because he wore a rosary to school, and that was the school principal said, "Oh, that's a gang symbol," and was serious about that. That's the thing that really has me concerned. But yeah, I mean, these courts, some of them have a very different worldview of how the Constitution framers thought about religion in America's public life. And really what the Constitution really says about this.
Absolutely. And I tell you, one of the things that I don't think we focused on enough is, yes, we did get a 5-4 victory on the crucial points of this case.
Yep.
But it was 5-4.
Well, that is the scary part. I mean, that's where elections have consequences.
We're one vote away.
Yeah.
From having really a religious cleansing of any sort of religious symbols across our country.
Well, I mean, I've said this. I mean, I don't know how I think we're getting very close, and you litigate cases at the Supreme Court also. I think we're getting very close to a period we were at in the mid-'80s on the religion cases where you were doing preventive cases. In other words, trying cases not to get to the Supreme Court of the United States because you were afraid of what that precedent that you already had established might end up.
Absolutely.
And we're a justice away from that exact same scenario. In the next election, the next presidential election, I think the issue of judges will play a significant issue.
Let's go right back to the phones. Michael's calling from California on line 6. Michael, welcome to JSECUO Live.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, thank you. Hey, Jay, I just thank the Lord for you. I support you guys every time I can. And this cross thing, I'm like with you guys. I'm tired of our ignorant government. I'm tired of the ignorant population we have here. And it's like, if they don't believe in God or don't believe in the Bible and everything, then why are they so afraid of a cross?
They can't stand it. I mean, it's almost as if they worship on a secular altar. I mean, it's just any semblance of religion in American public life is dangerous to them. And there are some that really take that seriously. They really believe that, Kelly.
Absolutely. It's a hostility. It's a religious hostility, and which is why even parts of our religious heritage, whether it's something in our Declaration of Independence, they don't like the mention of God or anything else, they would sandblast that stuff across the country if they were to win these types of cases.
We've seen the same thing with the Ten Commandment cases. Jordan, you and I were out in Pleasant Grove, Utah, just a year and a half ago when we did the report there before we did the Supreme Court argument, and then, of course, we had the argument. The case ended up going unanimously in our favor, but it was the same thing. The group, really, at the end of the day, they wanted to do the opposing group, the Summum group, wanted to do everything they could to make sure that Ten Commandment monument was down, even if it meant forcing a city to take a monument that was repugnant to the city's own founding.
That's right. I mean, their goal was not to get their monument up. Their goal was to get the Ten Commandments down. They knew at the end of the day, if they could get a court, including the Supreme Court, to hold that you've got to allow every single possible monument and viewpoint up, that every city in the country would just have to take it all down and say, you know what? We're not going to put up every monument that you want in Central Park or at the Statue of Liberty, especially also if you're a small town. I mean, you don't have to. If you have some criteria and something's got to be related to the town, that makes sense to everybody. Normally, if a town is predominantly Muslim, would anybody blush for a minute if there was some kind of monument or something for a well-known scholar from the area? Would anybody be upset? No. But here we have a situation where you target a small town, Pleasant Grove City, Utah, which has a park, which, I mean, if you call it a small area with things that relate directly to the town's history, the first fire station, for instance. But these kind of groups, they'd be happy with you saying, you know what, you got to take that one down too.
Yeah, and now the Mojave Desert, you have to be looking You had to be, you can't do it now, you had to be looking for this cross to find it in the Mojave Desert.
It is really in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the closest city is Sema. And if you go to Sema, you see two dilapidated buildings that have collapsed. That's all you see.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is literally in the middle of nowhere.
And it was a former, Jordan, so everybody knows here, I know we're getting towards the end of the program, it was a former employee of the Park Service that left the Park Service and then decided to sue.
Yeah, and he was not personally offended, but he thought, this may not be right. So former employee, not personally offended, but thought, well, this is probably not right because of this separation of church and state I keep hearing about. That's who brings this challenge with the ACLU backing him.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a moment here as we wind the program down. Kelly, the VFW, which you represent in this case, we represent members of Congress. The member of Congress, too, are outraged, too. I mean, this is kind of a unanimous outrage here. But the VFW, who you represented before, very helpful in our Supreme Court litigation on the Ten Commandments case, because the VFW was American Legion. These are the groups that are involved in these things. The commitment level to fight this went up volumes, I guess, and they've always been committed to fighting it when that monument was then stolen.
The commander's quote, I think, was, "This was just made very, very personal to over 20 million veterans." And I really do think they took it that way. And let me say thank you on behalf of all the veterans groups we represent for getting the word out on this, for the phone number and the different things you're doing to have people put pressure that they put that memorial back up. I would encourage people, they can go to the don'ttearmedown.com also and just send a note to these veterans groups, which we're forwarding right on to them so that they know the whole country is standing with them.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for the broadcast today, but we need to encourage you to take some direct action here. We've got to fight back. This is a tragic situation. You've got a World War I memorial cross. It's been there for over 70 years. Someone steals it, even though the Supreme Court of the United States says it can stay constitutionally, and our United States Department of Justice is not allowing it to be put back up because it's not, quote, a direct replica, because it doesn't have the same markings from when in the 1990s, President Clinton ordered that cross to be taken down, and they used a chainsaw to try to do it. They were not successful, by the way, because there was cement in those posts. So this is the reality of what we're dealing with. This is what it means. It means we've got to fight back. We've got a demand letter going to the Department of Justice. We're sending small wooden crosses. With everybody that calls us, we're going to add those crosses into this package going to the Department of Justice. Here's the number, and I want to encourage you to make the call right now. It's 877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 to sign this demand letter. Cross going out in your honor. Also, you can go to get updated information. You can sign actually the letter online at ACLJ.org. So again, 877-989-2255. Take a stand for this memorial cross today. That's going to do it for our broadcast. We'll talk to you next week.
A 7-foot cross on display in the Mojave Desert for more than 70 years, put in place by the VFW, a World War I memorial. The cross has survived many challenges, most recently at the Supreme Court just last month, ruling there's no constitutional crisis, saying the cross could stay in place. But then, vandals struck. They removed the cross. The outrage triggered an immediate response. A replacement cross was quickly made, and efforts began to put the replica back in place. But there's a problem. The National Park Service has refused, and now it's up to the Department of Justice to make a decision. The American Center for Law and Justice is preparing a demand letter urging the Justice Department to put up the replacement cross without delay. It's time for the Justice Department to do what's right. Stand with the ACLJ, and if you call now, we'll send a miniature cross to the Justice Department on your behalf. A reminder that thousands of Americans want the Supreme Court ruling honored. Call now 1-877-989-2255 or online at aclj.org.